I've been a janitor for most of my life. It's not the most glamorous job, but it's honest work. About 6 years ago, I got hired at St. Lillian's Memorial Hospital, one of those old medical buildings that's been standing since the 1950s. The place always had a strange feeling to it, especially at night. The walls seemed to hum when the hallways went quiet, and the smell of disinfectant never really covered the faint scent of something metallic underneath. My shift usually started around 10 p.m. and ended at sunrise. I worked alone most nights, just me, my cart, and the sound of the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The nurses used to joke that the basement was haunted, but I never thought much of it. That changed one Friday night in November. I was mopping the east hallway near the old records room when my mop head snagged something under one of the doors. When I bent down, I saw a small set of keys on a rusty ring. They looked ancient, the kind you'd see in a black and white movie, and one of them had a tag that read B3. I didn't remember any B3 section on the maintenance map. We only had B1 and B2 for the supply and boiler rooms. Curiosity got the better of me. After my rounds, I decided to check it out. Down in the basement, the air felt colder, heavier. The lights flickered like they were tired of working. I walked to the end of the corridor, where an old locked door sat behind some stacked boxes. The key slid in perfectly. When I turned it, something clicked and the door creaked open. Inside was a narrow staircase leading further down, deeper than any level I'd ever been. The smell hit me first: damp concrete, mildew, and something rotten. I took my flashlight and went down slowly, my footsteps echoing. The stairs ended in a corridor that looked untouched for decades. Peeling paint, water stains, and old hospital beds lined against the walls like forgotten memories. There were doors on both sides. Most of them were sealed shut, but one at the very end was slightly open. I could see faint light flickering inside, like candlelight. When I pushed it open, I froze. The room looked like a small operating theater, with old surgical tools laid out neatly on a tray. But they were clean, too clean. Someone had been here recently. I heard something drip. My flashlight moved to the corner of the room, where a single IV stand stood, a bag of red liquid hanging from it. My stomach twisted. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, dragging footsteps. I turned around, shining my light toward the sound. Nothing. Just the empty corridor. I started to back up, but the door behind me slammed shut. The sound echoed so loud it made my ears ring. I grabbed the handle, pulling, but it wouldn't budge. Then I heard a voice. It was faint, almost like a whisper through the walls. "You shouldn't be here." I pressed my ear against the cold metal door, and the whisper came again, louder this time. "Go back upstairs." I didn't need to be told twice. I yanked the key from my pocket, twisted it in the lock, and when the door finally gave way, I ran. I didn't care about my flashlight anymore. I just ran up those stairs 2 at a time until I hit the main basement level. When I got there, the air felt warm again, like I'd stepped out of a freezer. I turned back, and the door I had just come through was gone. I swear to you, it wasn't there. Just a solid concrete wall. I stood there for a long time, trying to understand what I had just seen. The next morning, I went to my supervisor, told him everything. He just looked at me for a long time and said, "You must have been tired. There is no level B3 in this building." He even pulled out the blueprints to prove it. I thought maybe I had hallucinated until that night when I came in for my shift again. My cart was waiting in the usual place, and sitting on top of it was the same set of old keys with the tag that read B3. I never went looking again. But sometimes, when the hospital goes quiet after midnight, I swear I can hear faint footsteps coming from below the boiler room, echoing through the pipes. And every time I hear them, I look at my key ring and see that rusty tag hanging there, reminding me that some doors should never be opened. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the real horror that's still to come. And tell me in the comments, what country are you watching from tonight? Let's see how far the fear spreads. I used to work as a night cleaner for a private elementary school just outside Cleveland. It wasn't a bad gig. The pay was steady, the building was quiet, and the job gave me a weird kind of peace. I liked the silence, the smell of floor wax, the sound of the mop sliding back and forth. But after what happened that winter, I can't stand the sound of a mop anymore. The school was old, built sometime in the 1940s. It had that kind of long, echoing hallway that makes every sound feel like it's coming from behind you. There were classrooms, a small library, an auditorium, and a basement used for storage. I usually clocked in around 9:30 p.m. when the last security guard made his rounds and left me with the keys. For the first few weeks, nothing unusual happened. I'd listen to music, do my rounds, clean the classrooms, and lock everything back up. But one night, about 2 months into the job, I noticed something strange. The janitor's closet light was on when I arrived. I never left it that way. When I opened the door, everything looked fine, except for the mop. It wasn't mine. The handle was metal, old-fashioned, and the mop head looked damp, like someone had just used it. I brushed it off. Maybe the day cleaner had found it and forgot to mention it. But then, when I went to clean the first floor hallway, I saw wet footprints on the tiles. Small, bare footprints leading toward the basement. At first, I thought maybe a kid had snuck in. I followed the footprints down, my flashlight bouncing against the walls as I descended. The basement light flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the floor. I called out, "Hello? You're not supposed to be down here." No answer. The footprint stopped right in front of an old metal door marked Supplies B. I tried the handle, locked. I turned to leave, but then I heard the unmistakable sound of water dripping. I looked back and saw a small puddle forming beneath the door, like someone had just washed the floor behind it. That's when I heard it, the sound of mopping, the steady swish, 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 rhythmic and slow. I felt a chill crawl up my arms. I knocked on the door and said, "Who's in there?" The mopping stopped. Silence. I leaned closer, trying to listen. Then suddenly, something slammed against the other side of the door so hard that the metal rattled. I jumped back, my flashlight nearly slipping from my hand. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I ran back upstairs and called my supervisor. He told me nobody should have been there and that I probably heard pipes or machinery. The next night I came back to work and found the same footprints. This time they led from the basement to the main hallway. I followed them to classroom 3A. Inside, one of the desks had been moved. There was a bucket of dirty water sitting in the middle of the room and that same old mop leaning against it. It smelled awful, like mud and rot. I took a step closer and saw something dark swirling in the water. Hair. Long strands of black hair floating on the surface. I gagged and backed away, slamming the door shut. I told my boss I wasn't cleaning that room again, but he just laughed it off. "You're letting your imagination get to you, Mike," he said. "It's an old building." A week later, the school got a new night cleaner to work with me, a quiet older guy named Harold. On his first shift, I warned him about the basement. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've been doing this for 20 years. Buildings like this all make noise." But when I came in the next evening, Harold's car was still parked outside, and his shift sheet wasn't signed. His keys were hanging in the lock of the janitor's closet. The police searched the building top to bottom. They found nothing. No sign of Harold, no struggle, no clues. The only thing that stood out was that old mop, the one with the metal handle, was gone. The school stayed closed for 3 days during the investigation. When I returned to pick up my last paycheck, I passed by classroom 3A. The bucket and mop were back in the middle of the room. The floor looked freshly cleaned, and it smelled faintly of bleach. When I looked closer, I noticed the water in the bucket wasn't clear. It was tinted red. I quit that day. But sometimes, when I pass by that part of town, I can still see the faint glow of a mop bucket through the classroom window, moving back and forth, like someone's still there, cleaning the same floor over and over again. There's something different about schools after dark. The laughter, the noise, the life that fills the halls during the day, it's all gone. What's left is silence, and silence in a place meant for sound feels wrong. That's why the old school where I worked as a janitor always made me uneasy at night. The building was massive, built in the 1930s, and parts of it had been shut down for years. The newer sections were clean and modern, but the east wing, that part had been sealed off after a fire back in the 90s. The only way in was through a side hallway most people didn't even know existed. One Friday night, my supervisor asked me to clean that section for the first time. The district was planning renovations, so they wanted it inspected and tidied up. He handed me the old key and said, "Don't be down there too long. The lights act up." The hallway smelled of old wood and smoke. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and each step echoed like I was walking through a tunnel. Every classroom door was locked, except one, room 13. At first, I didn't even realize there was a room 13. On every floor plan I'd seen, the rooms went from 12 to 14. But there it was, a faded number painted above a cracked wooden door. The handle was cold when I touched it. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a classroom frozen in time. Desks were scattered, old books covered in dust, and on the far wall hung a large, old-fashioned mirror. It didn't belong there. The glass was too clean, almost new, reflecting the faint beam of my flashlight. I stepped closer, wiping at the frame to look for a tag or label, but there was none. Just smooth wood, carved with faint scratches. As I leaned closer, something about the reflection felt wrong. My flashlight should have been visible, but it wasn't. I waved it side to side. Nothing. My reflection just stood there, perfectly still, even though I was moving. Then it smiled. I froze. My reflection's face twisted slightly, just enough for me to see its teeth. My body went cold. I took a step back, but the reflection stayed put, still smiling. I turned to leave the room, but the door that had been open was now shut tight. I pulled the handle, but it didn't budge. My reflection's eyes shifted upward, following me, even though I wasn't looking directly at it anymore. The air grew colder, and the smell of smoke filled my lungs again, like the fire had just started. Something moved behind me, a faint scrape of a chair leg. I turned sharply, shining my flashlight, but all the desks were still. I looked back at the mirror and saw someone standing behind my reflection. A figure in a charged school uniform, face blackened, eyes empty. I spun around, nothing. When I looked back again, the mirror was fogged up, like someone had breathed on it. Slowly, words appeared, written from the other side. "We never left." The lights flickered violently, buzzing overhead. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and for a moment I saw dozens of faces staring back, burned, twisted, watching me from the other side of the glass. The door behind me suddenly flew open with a loud crack, slamming against the wall. I didn't hesitate. I bolted out of room 13, sprinted down the hallway, and didn't stop until I was outside, gasping in the freezing air. When I told my supervisor what happened, he looked pale. He told me there was never supposed to be a room 13, that the area where I claimed to have found it was sealed off after the fire in 1994. 6 students had died that night, trapped inside. I went back during the day with a small group to prove what I'd seen. The hallway was there, but the door wasn't. Between room 12 and 14, there was just solid brick. No door, no sign of room 13, no mirror. But as we were leaving, one of the construction workers pointed something out on the floor. It was a shard of glass, old, darkened, and faintly reflective. When the sunlight hit it, for just a second, I could have sworn I saw my reflection smiling back. And that's the end of tonight's stories. If you made it this far, you're one of the brave ones. Make sure to hit subscribe if you enjoy true horror, because there's a lot more coming soon. And before you go, tell me in the comments, would you ever work a night shift alone after hearing these stories?